Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have yet another example of DEI just running its ugly head with something that a lot of nerds absolutely loved in the past before it would be considered cool or mainstream now, but Dungeons & Dragons senior game designer just recently disavowed, I guess, how the series was made by white dudes, and boasts that much of the original material would never pass their inclusivity reviews today. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this guy who would not have a job if it wasn't for those white dudes who made Dungeons & Dragons in the beginning, who would not have something to virtue signal with if it wasn't for those white dudes in the beginning, is now basically trying to kick those same white dudes out of the game because of DEI.
What madness is this?
So let's get into this article, guys, from Bounding Into Comics. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. So it says, in delivering what is perhaps one of the most self-aggrandizing virtue signals in recent history, current Dungeons & Dragons senior game designer Jason Tondreau has taken to proudly touting the fact that much of the series' original materials, which he condescendingly writes off thanks to having been made by white dudes, would never pass our inclusivity reviews today. Now, why would any of that matter? Ladies and gentlemen, why would any of that matter? I have no idea. This man clearly is so obsessed with DEI that he can't even look into the past and be thankful for those that did the work in order to give him a job in the first place. It's probably one of the most insulting things. It's kind of similar to when Amazon got their hands on Lord of the Rings and decided to make that bastardization of a show, Rings of Power. It's the same exact thing. A lot of them would look at Tolkien's work, who's someone who they can never get anywhere close to writing anywhere close as well as he did. They look at his work and they say, oh, it's not inclusive enough. It's not diverse enough. He's racist. He's this. Imagine looking at something as magical as that and just being completely obsessed with DEI that you can't even respect it in the slightest way. This is the same exact thing. Tondreau has no respect for those that came before him, has no respect for those that gave him a job, has no respect for anything because he has been hired for one reason and one reason only. These entire gaming studios, tabletop gaming studios, actual game studios, whatever, they are all obsessed with DEI. They don't need consultancy firms to do DEI because most of them are going to do it anyway. They're just using consultancy firms because it furthers their DEI goals. They can say that they hired a diverse firm in order to make sure their game was ultra diverse and sensitive. That's what they do. It says Tondreau offered his take on the current state of the popular tabletop RPG franchise while speaking with official D&D content creator Todd Kenrick in promotion of Wizards of the Coast's upcoming series-centric history book, Dungeons & Dragons: The Making of Original D&D 1970 to 1977. It says, following a lengthy summary of the book's content, as well as his own history with the franchise, Tondreau was eventually met by the observation from Kenrick that it's important to note that this is a historical document, so there are things in here. It was definitely a different time, so we've had an inclusivity review of all these materials, to which he enthusiastically replied, multiple. So let's take a step back here. Let's clarify. There are materials in original Dungeons & Dragons that would never pass our inclusivity reviews today. Some of it you can understand, the designer proceeded to argue, like, okay, these are a bunch of war games. They're using armies from history, so when they create a warrior class for D&D, they call it the Fighting Man, the original name for the fighter class, because that's what they were used to. They were all men. They were all white dudes from Lake Geneva and the Twin Cities. Well, guess what? They still would all be men. They would all be men. They ain't no women that are going to be doing that 9 times out of 10. They're going to be mostly men. But of course, it's going to be a fantasy game, so you can make that argument. I get it. It says, yes, you read that right. Tondreau just dismissed D&D creators Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson as nothing more than ignorant white dudes. Anybody shocked by that? I mean, these guys, they don't have any appreciation for what came before them. They don't, because they're so comfortable now. They live in such a comfortable society that is pushing DEI because they got to find oppression somewhere. Otherwise, they'd have nothing to complain about. They live in this comfortable society that is allowing this stuff to happen, that is allowing these mindsets to foster. And it just goes to show how bad it can get, to the point where you are disrespecting the founders of the employer that employed you. Just think about that. You work for Dungeons & Dragons, you work for them, and you are disrespecting the people that founded it. Like, that is just a next level ignorance. It says, following this insult, he continued, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of material in this book, and I won't go over all of it, but it would not pass our inclusivity review today. We couldn't change it. It's history. What we can do is acknowledge it and show how far we've come, because that's not D&D anymore. Now, I do appreciate Okay, I do appreciate one thing. I do appreciate the fact that he said it's history, we can't change it. I'm glad that he said that because they are actively trying to change history. A lot of them are. Let's be real. A lot of people that think like this man are trying to change history through revisionism. They're trying to revise history through culture, through movies and everything. It's like the We Was Kangs meme, right? Like We Was Kangs and shit. That's what they're trying to do. So I'm glad that he at least admitted that it's history and you cannot change it. It has to be historically accurate. It says, turning his virtue signal up to max brightness, Tondro further assured Kenrick, D&D gets more diverse and has a larger audience every day. The more diverse the game becomes, the more people of different genders and ethnic backgrounds and faiths see themselves in the game. Then they go make their own versions of the game, and more players start to see themselves represented in the game. The more diverse the creators get, the more diverse the players become, and that's the way it should be. So this book is very interesting. So I think it really highlights how far the audience is come and how the game has changed over the 50 years, he concluded. How it's played, who plays it, and how it's created. In many ways, the way that it's created is the part that changed the least, because a huge driver in early D&D was fan creations, and that's still true today. Hilariously, the last declaration by Tondro actually proves as a counter to everything he said above. As to his point, D&D never barred anyone of any identity from being represented in the game, specifically because its entire existence is based on the fact that players create their characters and adventures as they see fit. And that was exactly what I was going to say, but I'm glad the article said it for me. So in a game where you can essentially create your own story, your own world, your own whatever, you're going to say that players only now can be able to see themselves in this game? This game is literally, that's what it's for. That's what D&D is for. It's built on the backs of fans that originally were probably mostly white, like you said. But ultimately, if somebody who wanted to be or who was diverse, who wanted to make diverse characters or whatever, they had the ability to do so. It is a mostly fan service game. So I don't understand this notion. You're just only saying this now because you're trying to push your narrative about DEI being the most important reason why D&D is successful. And let's be real, that is far from the case. It says, as with all other such declarations, that tabletop RPGs were never inclusive. While some individual dungeon masters and story settings may implement some limits on character creation in order to help boost players' immersion for a specific campaign, there has never been any official rule in D&D barring players from assigning whatever traits they want to their completely custom characters. Further, it should be noted that it was not just Tondro's interview with Kenrick which saw an official D&D source feign such pearl-clutching towards the inclusion of the game's original content in the making of the original D&D. What follows is the book's official description, wherein 3 sentences are dedicated to describing its actual content, while a full 6 are used to performatively and excessively assure readers that D&D parent company Wizards of the Coast in no way, shape, or forms endorses the problematic subject matter contained within. So they put a trigger warning. They put a trigger warning on a book, ladies and gentlemen. Think about that for a second. They put a trigger warning on the history of D&D. That's how woke we are talking about right now. That's how woke Tondro is. That's how woke people are in D&D right now. It's fucking pathetic. If you need a trigger warning on a book, you honestly need to just go to sleep. Just go to sleep and never wake up, because it's not going to be safe for you no matter where you look if you need a trigger warning in a book. It says, here is the ultimate record of how Dungeons & Dragons came to be. The making of original D&D is an extraordinary collection of rare documents that shed light on D&D's origin story. Uncover materials never released to the public, including Gary Gygax's first draft of original D&D and early published writings such as the 1974 original D&D white box booklets and supplements. Each document is featured alongside insightful commentary from one of the game's foremost historians, John Peterson. Disclaimer: we, Wizards, recognize that some of the legacy content in this product does not reflect the values of the Dungeons & Dragons franchise today. Some older content may reflect ethnic, racial, and gender prejudices that were commonplace in American society at that time. No, it's called normal. It's called normalcy. That's what it was. These depictions were wrong then and are wrong today. This content is presented as it was originally created, because to do so otherwise would be the same as claiming these prejudices never existed. Dungeons & Dragons teaches that diversity is a strength, and we strive to make our D&D products as welcoming and inclusive as possible. This part of our work will never end. Oh my God, man. The virtue signaling is through the roof, ladies and gentlemen. D&D is woke as shit. We already know that. And the fact of the matter is, I find it funny that these people who claim that the originators of D&D are so racist, or they're just white dudes or whatever, they have no problems profiting off of them by releasing this book, right? They're releasing this book. They're profiting off of them. They're profiting off of their names. They got no problems profiting off of these racist people, these people who are just white dudes who wanted to keep everything non-inclusive. They have no problems profiting off of them and making money off of this book, shockingly. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.